you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working, that's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Now that ain't working, that's the way you do it. Let me tell you, damn guys ain't dumb. Maybe get a blister on your little finger. Maybe get a blister on your thumb. We got to install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs.
One of the major pieces of evidence in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, an 8mm home movie taken by a local businessman named Abraham Zapruder. The Zapruder film was featured in Life magazine and became a focal point in the Warren Commission investigation. Does the Zapruder film we see today accurately represent the true events of November 22nd, 1963? Or has it been altered, as many researchers have suggested? In the following analysis, we shall attempt to find out. As you watch the film, you can see how the random motion of the camera makes analysis of the events difficult. Our first step is to remove as much of this extra motion as possible to focus solely on the movement of the limousine and the people in the scene. You can see that once the limousine is stabilized, it is easier to follow the movement of the people in the car and on the lawn. Previous researchers have stabilized the limousine as well to focus solely on the actions of Kennedy in the car. Now we're going to do something different. The first bystanders we see on the lawn seem to be looking not at the limousine which is passing them, but behind it, as if it has not reached them yet. This odd reaction would seem to support the idea that the background action is out of sync with the limousine. Let's take a look at the way separate layers could be combined in a 1963 era film using either an optical printer or an animation stand. Both use the same principle. The background bystanders on the lawn would need to be separated by masking out the limousine. This would leave a blank area in the foreground. In order to retime the background without this blank area showing, the background could be enlarged and reframed to create an overlap area. Then the limousine layer, with the background masked out, could overlap this new background and be retimed and positioned independently, allowing its speed to be controlled as well. These layers joined together form what is called a composite. A jitter could then be applied to this composite to create the final effect. It has been argued by John Costella, Ph.D., that the Stemmons Freeway sign which passes in front of the limousine has been fabricated. His detailed analysis shows how the sign does not exhibit the same lens distortion or align in perspective with other objects in the scene. If the sign were a separate layer on top of the limousine, this would be the perfect way to cover the change between real and retimed footage. We also see Mary Moorman standing with her friend in the red coat, clearly on the lawn, when according to her testimony, she stepped forward onto the street when she took her picture as Kennedy was shot. If the lawn footage has been retimed, we may actually be seeing an earlier moment before she stepped forward. Another unsettling aspect to the bystanders is their unusually large size in relation to their distance from the limousine and its occupants, as if the entire background had been blown up. This again supports the theory that the background layer has been resized separately. As the car passes the last couple on the lawn, the man's legs go from a position of standing feet together to standing wide apart in one frame. That's an 1/18 of a second, which is a near physical impossibility, not to mention strange. It is, however, the logical point to cut from the retimed background back to real footage as the car speeds away. Here's an example of bystanders showing motion blur. Notice their shadows on the lawn are also blurry, as they naturally would be. However, just a few frames later, we see this. The bystanders are even more blurred, yet their shadows are impossibly sharp. This is a clear example of retouching, and further proof that the background has been altered. Although the lamppost passes in front of the limousine, it exhibits no movement in relation to the far background, as it should, being an object much closer in three-dimensional space to the panning camera. It also displays an odd, blurred extension on its lower left side where it passes in front of the limousine, giving the lamppost an artificial, cut-out appearance. This further supports the theory that the limousine layer has been separated from the background lawn. Therefore, the lamppost would need to be cut out as well to overlay the limousine. Inconsistencies regarding the actions of the people in the limousine have been a point of discussion among researchers. For example, the driver turns his head twice to look behind and then forward faster than physically possible, which seems to indicate removed frames. The head turns correspond to 2 points at which the passengers lurch forward, as if the car has braked suddenly, although the car shows only gradual slowing compared to the background. The second of these brakes seems to be strong enough to throw Connolly and his wife completely to the floor of the car, and the driver and front passenger forward as well. These examples alone point to significant retiming of the limousine speed. The sprocket hole area on the left side of the frame reveals an interesting clue when the motorcycle officer momentarily pulls up from behind the limousine at the same time as the second passenger lurch. This seems to indicate either the motorcycle suddenly sped up, or, more likely, the limousine suddenly braked, and the officer was not prepared for it and braked later, having the effect of pulling up alongside the limousine. Yet, the film does not seem to show the limousine slowing or stopping, again supporting the theory that the timing has been altered. This brings us to our final question. Why would someone do this? As mentioned before, the passengers in the limousine lunge forward at one point as if the car has braked suddenly. Many witnesses at the time testified that they saw the limousine slow or stop at the time Kennedy received the fatal headshot. Imagine the outcome of the Warren Commission investigation if they had seen a film in 1963 showing the Secret Service driver bringing the presidential limousine to a complete stop after shots had been fired to allow the assassin a clear, unmoving target for the fatal headshot. Who would they investigate then? A lone gunman? We began this presentation asking the question, does the Zapruder film today accurately represent the true events of November 22nd, 1963? Our answer is no. Let's review our findings. The pasted freeway sign, the large bystanders, the painted shadows, the cutout lamppost, the lurching passengers, the braking motorcycle. Once you have seen this evidence, it's difficult to watch the Zapruder film and see it as anything but a fabrication. Those who created it never wanted us to see even this much, but now it is too late. We know that the film was altered and retimed before the public saw it, most likely to hide the stopping of the limousine. Once this fact is accepted, an enormous house of cards begins to fall. If the Secret Service driving the limousine was involved, who else was involved? If the Secret Service, FBI, or CIA, who all had possession of the original Zapruder film, were involved in its alteration, what does that mean? If Time Life, which immediately bought the rights to the film and then refused to show it for decades, was involved, what does that mean? If the Warren Commission based their report on the timeline of a false Zapruder film, what does that mean?
Now let's examine a hypothesis that is seemingly ridiculous. Could the entirety of the Apollo images have been created in the controlled environment of interior or exterior studio sets? As the sheer magnitude of achieving such a task without being discovered or denounced would appear to be beyond the bounds of possibility, most people are quick to laugh this hypothesis off as an example of conspiracy theory run amok. Yet before we dismiss it so readily, let's remember that it's initially easier to dismiss outrageous ideas even if they should eventually be proven correct. Simply because we might not want to face up to uncomfortable truths, and because to acknowledge that truth would make us look complete fools. It is apparently okay to acknowledge the lack of authenticity of the visual information surrounding an event safely buried in the relatively distant past, such as the sinking of the Lusitania by 3 torpedoes.
This event, which had the effect of bringing America into the First World War, happened out of sight of a British newsreel camera. But that detail didn't stop the media creating a fake scene, shot on a London pond, and presenting the result to the public as the authentic coverage of that incident.
As an example of the deliberate withholding of information at the turn of the century, we learned that the prime cause of the horrific accident that led to the demise of the Hindenburg was not hydrogen, as ruled after the accident, but was actually the nature of the fabric covering the dirigible. It's now clear that this outer fabric was known at the time to have been highly inflammable. The fact that the constructors then continued to use a medium known to be potentially lethal is of no surprise to an industry that has spawned its own series of disasters.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go and throttle up.
Challenger, go and throttle up. 1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
And as we're finding out, what worked for the past masters of aeronautics is seemingly still valid. Would it have been possible to pull off the task of faking the record?
To create a set of stills and the TV coverage on the scale of Apollo would certainly require considerable resources. It would also need an exciting storyline full of dramatic events and human interest, requiring scriptwriters, actors and costumes. These would then need studios, cameras, lighting and of course sets. But we suggest that all preparations and making the pre-recorded TV coverage took place over such a long period and was so woven into the everyday life of the Apollo space program that even though this particular odyssey was made literally under the very noses of innocent employees and contractors, the fact that the final cut was phony went undetected at the time.
Returning to the matter in hand, Apollo and the moonwalkers, is there any evidence that mountain backgrounds used in the Apollo imagery could possibly have been multiple-use artificial backdrops?
There appear to be some blatant discrepancies in the location of the limb in relation to the surrounding landscape in Apollo 17. there seem to be some serious multiple uses of mountain backdrops. Any given background can be the same size irrespective of the scale of the scene. This is often the case despite the varying distances that the photographers, their equipment and the LEM were supposed to be from any of these mountain backdrops. The EVA route at the Taurus Littrow Valley, the areas where the two astronauts allegedly drove their roving vehicle and then walked on foot, extends many miles away from the landing site towards the lower region of this map. This is the landing spot at Taurus Littrow. As the camera pulls back, we can see that all these mountains are located well away from the LEM's landing site. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to some rather peculiar features in the mountains of Taurus Littrow that appear in the record. In the background is a rather distinctive mountain with a steepish slope on the left and a gradual slope off to the right. Centrally positioned is a light-coloured mound and an interesting mini crater feature inset above it. And over to the right is another mound with a larger, darker crater-like feature. We'll be seeing more of this mountain and the mounds in the sequences that follow. Here again is the light-coloured mound on the left, and in the centre the second mound with its larger, darker crater-like feature. Notice in the left foreground are some experiment packages. And now with the LEM in the foreground, you'll recognise the mound with the dark crater-like feature. We have confirmation of the LEM's apparent close proximity to this location by way of this image as well. Note the two key features, the light-coloured mound on the left and the second mound with a darker feature to the right. But when we look again at the wide view of the valley with an astronaut standing by the large split rock, we can see there's no apparent sign whatsoever of the LEM in relation to the scale of the mountains we were looking at in the previous image. Here's another view, this time looking over Split Rock. Notice the crater in the centre, with no obvious sign of the lunar module at all. We now return to the Split Rock location, and an even wider composited image revealing an area to the right of the boulder. Surprisingly, this is the area in the centre of the picture, where the LEM is supposed to have landed. Look how tiny it is in relation to the setting and the surrounding mountain landscape. What anomalous scaling compared with the close-up view of the LEM we saw earlier. As we bring the centre larger, notice how small the LEM looks in relation to what appear to be absolutely enormous mountains. Returning to the footage we saw previously, compare the mountains seen in the TV coverage with those in this still photograph. They're virtually identical, yet the LEM is absent from the still image and present in the TV coverage. Let's take a closer look at other imaging anomalies at this site and the continuity of the LEM in relation to its backgrounds. This wide view is looking across the Taurus Littrow Valley with the distinctive mountain, a light-coloured mound and the little feature above it. Now as we mix through to the TV coverage, the LEM is clearly at the same location. Compare this still image from which the LEM is absent with what is obviously the same location where the LEM is present. Although the lighting has changed, the mountain is recognisably the same. All very surprising, because earlier we registered that the LEM was absent from this spot. We also noted that the LEM had apparently landed well away from these mountains. But in this TV freeze, we see exactly the same mountain yet again, with the LEM.
Have the mountains been moved to suggest a different location between one set of images and another, cost-saving on scenic backgrounds? Or has the LEM itself been moved?
It looks as though the mountains were moved around. You see, money was no object with Apollo, so we must conclude that this action is a further example of intentional whistleblowing by those involved. I'm now going to run a 360-degree TV panorama sequence at that location. Identified as EVA-1, Site 1, it was shot from the rover's TV camera, remotely operated from Mission Control. Notice the shadow of the LEM in the foreground and the pair of mountains in the distance. But these appear to be mountains with unique qualities. We saw earlier that this distant view, seen on the TV coverage, is the location of the LEM, here in the middle distance. So how can the same view possibly exclude the LEM? As we continue with the panorama, we should return to the point where we started, with the distinctive mountain in the background and the LEM in the foreground. However, that doesn't happen, as we'll see. We can state with confidence that this part of the 360-degree panorama that we've extracted from another take, EVA2, Site 5, is intended to suggest a different location in the valley. But here's the distinctive mountain with a lighter coloured mound. And the LEM? Surprise, surprise, there's no sign of the LEM whatsoever this time. Either the LEM was moved away, or this is a studio set with movable mountain elements forming the background to the foreground action. These continuity discrepancies cannot be explained in any other way. The clue to ascertaining what may have actually occurred lies in establishing that the darker markings on the left-hand side of the background mountain are common to all these images. NASA would have us believe that these pictures were taken many miles apart, but if that were the case, the perspective of the mountains would vary drastically. On the contrary, the markings on the left side of the distinctive mountain remain constant. They're in the same place in relation to this steepish slope on the left, in every case. Put another way, in relation to this slope, these markings should move to the right as one moves further to the left of the valley. But the only noticeable difference is that this mound to the right changes its position, revealing the mound with a darker inset feature, but other elements of the scene do not substantially change in any of these views. Despite the fact that the LEM is supposed to have landed well away from any mountains, in the images with astronauts present, the mountain backdrops are never very far away at all.
So why do images with action in the foreground have backgrounds that appear so close?
No doubt this situation is the consequence of limitations imposed by working in a studio environment, without the benefit of backgrounds miles away, as would have been the case at the true location. It was possible, though, to create the illusion of a vast landscape for some of the impressive scene-setting imagery, especially the stills. Here again is the TV coverage of the LEM's supposed landing site, emphasizing that the location is nowhere near the mountains that form the backdrop to the previous images. This picture of the LEM, so close to its background, cannot possibly relate to the suggested location of the LEM in this image. The distant scaling discrepancies in the various backgrounds gives it all away. Yet more examples of inconsistencies in the record.
Is there any further evidence of mountains being moved around? And is it possible to detect any joins in the working area which could show telltale breaks, say, between the studio floor, the surface area and vertical mountain background?
Yes. In virtually every case, whether stills imaging or TV coverage, we can see just such a join line between the key elements, the horizontals and the verticals. In our view, had these images been taken in a natural location, this obvious join line would not be in evidence. And here in this illustration, you can clearly see how the working area and the mountain background with its supports would be separated, resulting in just such a join line showing up in the images as an obvious break. Rather significantly, in the 1971 James Bond movie, Diamonds Are Forever, when Bond penetrates the Willard White tectonic site in the desert outside Las Vegas, Nevada, he eventually finds himself on an interior moon set, surrounded by 3 separate levels of movable flats depicting lunar mountains. We also see the wooden supporting structure of these mountain backgrounds, a gallery full of sound, light and computing equipment, as well as actonauts practicing slow-mo movements.
Get him off that machine, that isn't a toy.
And finally, when Bond escapes on a hybrid of a rover and a LEM through the flimsy wall of this moonset, we see that he's emerging from the grey-domed building that looks remarkably like the northern hemisphere of the moon. This entire scene is, without doubt, whistleblowing on a very grand scale.
So, David Percy considers that Bond sequence to be whistleblowing. But surely one scene in a film does not a true story make. This single scene could be construed as an amused nod of the head on the part of the filmmakers to the Apollo hoax theory that was already circulating by 1970. That having been said, there's no doubt at all that author Ian Fleming had his finger on the pulse of world events. Through his intelligence contacts, he kept abreast with both Soviet and American rocket technology and received technical updates and advice from the British Interplanetary Society.
It is quite clear that Diamonds Are Forever contains information as to how the Apollo, witnessed by the world, was actually staged. Either the whole film script was totally inspired, or someone in the know clearly seeded information into the film. For although the original book storyline would have worked very well for the movie, new situations were grafted onto Fleming's principal locations. This film contains a multitude of relevant, covert references to the anomalies in the Apollo program. Another example concerns the dangers of radiation. In a very memorable scene, immediately prior to the interior moonset sequence, in Diamonds Are Forever, Bond highlights the subject of radiation.
Hello.
Hi.
I haven't seen you here before.
I'm Klaus Hergesheimer.
New here.
I've been here 3 years. G-section.
How are things in G-section?
Well, still the same old grind, you know. Checking radiation shields for replacing. Hey, by the way, where's yours?
I've been waiting a couple of days for you guys to deliver them.
Oh, gee, I'm sorry. You should have given us a phone call. Here, look, I've got one here. Lucky for you, I carry spares. Now, you keep that on. You can't be too careful about radiation.
Absolutely. I feel much safer with this on.
See you around.
Who are you? What do you want?
Klaus Hergesheimer, G-section. Just checking on radiation shields. Now, let me see. You are,
Professor Dr. Metz. Our shields are fine. Now get out.
Thank you very much.
We will be looking at the hazards of space radiation later in the programme. The movie Diamonds Are Forever is confirmation, though, that some works of fiction can communicate vital clues. Producing an Apollo sound and light show in a studio would naturally imply the use of moving image creation and sound recording facilities.
Using conventional motion picture film for the pre-creation of the live TV coverage would have been very risky, as film could easily get scratched or even break during transmission. The best material for the purpose would have been videotape. This was not widely used in the 60s, but it was in use by NASA and the US government. Using an emerging technology would enable the perpetrators of a hoax to pull off the trick with impunity. Don't forget, in the 1960s, the networks had to film off TV screens during the transmissions. Today, this is an aspect of the Apollo story that many engineers and producers find highly suspect. The best result would have been to provide the networks with a direct video feed, but they did not do that.
So we now have to ask, could early video equipment have been used in the generation of the live TV coverage of Apollo?
We did use early videotape machines, Ampex VR660, and later on an Ampex VR1100, the quad tape machine. And we kept those tapes on site for quite a long time. We received that FM carrier down on the Earth, ran it through an FM demodulator, and processed it in an RCA scan converter that took the slow scan picture and converted it to the American standard black and white television signal, and then sent that on to Houston. When we were converting from slow scan to fast scan, RCA used the disc in the scan recorder as a memory, so it played back the same video several times until it got updated video.
In other words, the incoming signal was recorded onto a magnetic disc for black and white TV. And for colour, it had first to be recorded onto tape recorder 1, then played back on tape recorder 2. Only then could there be a conventional colour TV picture.
The idea that what we all saw on our screens in July 1969 was actually live from the moon recedes by the minute. Are there any indications that the moonwalk sequences were actually filmed on Earth under studio conditions? And how difficult would it have been to simulate the moon's 1/6 gravity?
Researchers have noticed that when the rover was filmed driving across the dusty surface, the dust thrown up by the rover's wheels clumps, just as it would if it were driven in a location where there's an atmosphere. Had the rover really been performing in a vacuum, the lunar conditions, not only would the dust have sprayed out in a perfect and progressive parabolic arc, but due to the reduced gravity, this arc would have risen up to 6 times higher than it would have done on Earth. This Apollo footage records the dust actually being stopped in its tracks as it encounters an atmosphere.
The moon has a much lower surface gravity, like it's 1/6 of the surface gravity on the Earth. So pictures of falling things, you see things moving, falling slowly, and you see people moving about as if they don't weigh very much. So faking these motion pictures, and remember that many of the pictures returned from the Apollo project were motion pictures, that really show people operating in an environment where they and their equipment weighs about 1/6 of what it would on the Earth. So it's really very difficult to fake in a studio on the Earth, where the gravity would of course be normal.
In the 1999 revised edition of Apollo, From the Earth to the Moon, an astronaut is heard to say, "There's no dust at all," which is only possible if the exercise is taking place on a hard surface.
9 miles an hour. As I can see, I'm going to have to keep my eyes on the road.
However, there are carving lines through the loose surface coating.
A little rise. There's no dust at all. Steering is quite responsive.
And if there are tracks in the surface coating, then there should also be significant movement of surface material arcing out from under the wheels of the rover. In this respect, the new sequence is in direct contrast to the original 16mm Apollo camera footage. The statement, "there's no dust," doesn't even belong with this action, but with the earlier arrival of the LEM. The rewriting of the record, for which there is allegedly already authentic documentation, does not in any way help to preserve the real credentials of the original. It only demonstrates that in a probable attempt to avoid the scandal of the millennium, NASA has chosen to support a revised edition of Apollo. But in our view, the agency has chosen poorly. Astronauts moving in slow motion is another hallmark of the Apollo TV footage. There is no evidence at all of any astronaut making a leap or a jump anywhere near a height commensurate with 1/6 G possibilities. But if they were actually simulating EVAs on Earth, they would then need help with their bulky heavyweight suits and backpacks in order to achieve the visual effect of moving around easily in lunar gravity. So enter wire supports. This is a tried and tested way of relieving weight from performers, or even flying an actor. Here is a sequence from one of our own productions.
Excuse me, will I need a car?
Relax, Chris. We're only making a short journey back to 1969, to the beginning of Unix.
Of course, confirmation that wires were used is in the detail. Here in this Apollo 14 footage, you can see a ping, a momentary glint. And again, run slowly. And once more. There are other examples too. This one is from Apollo 17 during the flag scene. You can see the ping at the top of the frame. In this footage from Apollo 16, we have telltale evidence of a slightly floating or dangling effect at the jump salute location. It's as if the weight is being taken off the astronaut's feet just a second or so too soon. Compare that sequence with an obvious rehearsal rig. The dangling effect is very evident. And here again, from the same mission, Apollo 16, we have an astronaut who is about to get up.
Give me a hand. Okay, here we go.
"Let me give you a hand," he says.
There goes bag. There goes another bag. Bag. Coming.
Look at it again. The astronaut is getting up with the wire taking the weight, relieving him of 5/6 of the Earth's gravity. A magic trick? No, just the help of a wireman. This is a slow-motion jump that would have been seen live on TV. And here it is at normal speed. The well-rehearsed, pre-recorded material was apparently slowed down by 50% when we saw it on TV. And yes, we've done the necessary work to establish that percentage.
How was the slow motion effect achieved?
Well, creating these 1/6 slow simulations would have been a relatively straightforward process. First, the scene would have been photographed and recorded onto videotape at the normal rate in the US, 30 frames per second. On playback, the recording would have been slowed down to half speed. As each video frame is made up of 2 different fields, this will give 60 different frames of image per second, because each individual field now becomes a frame. We must remember that the live TV transmissions were filmed off TV screens for posterity. The archiving of the Apollo moonwalks was on 60mm film, just like this. Movie film has an entirely different makeup to that of a videotape recording. Film only has frames and not fields. So when the resulting footage was filmed off a TV screen, the fact that the playout of the original video was slowed down to half speed would have gone totally undetected and remain virtually undetectable. Now this is how the jump salute would have looked at normal speed before being slowed down by the method just described. Looks rather like it would on Earth, does it not? The video equipment used in Apollo was early generation. Therefore it would have been recorded onto 2-inch tape, the state of the art in the 1960s.
If you remember, there was a beautiful piece of footage from the Apollo 15 mission where the astronauts demonstrated the surface gravity on the moon by holding a hammer in one hand and a feather in the other. Now, it was proved in physics a long time ago that objects fall at the same speed, doesn't matter how heavy they are, and a feather will fall at the same speed as a hammer. And the only reason that the feather doesn't fall at the same speed as a hammer in this room is because the resistance of the air in the room slows down the feather. If you do this experiment on the moon, they both fall together. And there's this piece of footage that shows this done by the camera pointing at the astronaut, dropping the hammer and the feather, and sure enough they both fall together, and that proves immediately that this experiment was done in a vacuum. So this movie set would have to have been evacuated, it would have to be a vacuum. But more than that, the 2 objects fall slowly. They would fall 6 times faster on the Earth because the gravity is stronger. You see them fall slowly on the moon.
And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a Falcon feather for our Falcon, and I'll drop the 2 of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that?
This is also a very difficult image to fake.
Well, actually, it isn't at all difficult to fake. NASA itself would repeat the very same trick, this time officially in the 1999 story From the Earth to the Moon. This time the astronaut held the hammer the other way up, so that we could see it was not the same fakery as the first time. Of course, that original demonstration by Apollo 15 doesn't in any way prove that it had taken place on the moon. Before NASA reenacted the whole thing officially, we had already conducted our own experiment. Here we are in our London studio in 1G, complete with an atmosphere, and without the benefit of a vacuum chamber. There they go. As you can see, the feather and the hammer arrive on the ground at the same time. Now if we slow it down by the appropriate amount, lo and behold, these 2 items fall nice and slowly as per a 1/6 G environment. This illusion is all about calibration.
Following their research, Bennett and Percy have arrived at a firm conclusion regarding the reason for the anomalies and inconsistencies found in both the stills and TV coverage of Apollo.
All the apparent mistakes that we've observed are, in our view, deliberate. We think it's very possible that some of those who were involved in the design and execution of the sets, the photography, lighting and production were perhaps very distressed when they realized what they were expected to do under the guise of service to their employers and their government. For NASA is a government agency, and their contractors grade their staff with security clearances in the same way as the military do. It is possible that instead of courting what could be life-threatening danger by standing up and blowing a whistle in public, these brave souls encoded their work with deliberate mistakes that will be detected sometime in the future, long after the emotion of the event had cooled.
What does Una Ronald, who was in Western Australia at the time, think about these attempts at fakery?
When I saw the Coke bottle, for me, the whole moon landing from that point was a fake. It was a setup. And if it was a setup, it must have been filmed somewhere on Earth. And it would have been filmed, to my way of thinking, in America, at some lonely site, or alternatively in a huge indoor set, somewhere where they could be private, be secluded, be able to produce this quite passable picture of someone walking on the moon.
Most of us will recall that famous movie Capricorn 1, featuring 3 astronauts who are hoisted out of the launch rockets at the last minute to be informed that the technology won't get them to Mars safely. So in the interests of maintaining the space program, they must take part in the simulation of their voyage to Mars. Less well known is the fact that one of the originators of this storyline was Bill Kaysing, and that the destination of the original story was not Mars, but the moon.
People at an extremely high level came up with the entire simulation, which was then filmed in Las Vegas in Area 51 at the northeast corner of what used to be the Atomic Energy Test Station there, and also at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino.
The convincing evidence presented so far in this program strongly suggests that the TV coverage and the photographic record of Apollo is faked.
Winston, can you see, are you on the north side there where the plane made contact?
Yes, I am.
There where the plane made contact?
But I'd say the hold is, let me just get a better look right now.
Okay, go ahead. We'll wait.
I'd say the hold takes about, looks like 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Winston, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a moment.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a moment.
I understand Teresa Renault is with us right now. Miss Renault, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
This is Bryant Gumbel. I'm down on 59th and 5th. Where are you?
I am in Chelsea, and we are at 8th and 16th. We are the tallest building in the area, and my window faces south, so it looks directly onto the World Trade Center. And I would say, approximately 10 minutes ago, there was a major explosion from probably, it looks like about the 80th floor. It looks like it's affected probably 4 to 8 floors. Major flames are coming out of the north side and also the east side of the building, yes.
You're over in Chelsea. Did you hear the explosion from
yes.
your position?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, we heard it, and because I was just like standing there pretty much looking out the window, I didn't see what caused it or if there was an impact.
So you have no idea right now?
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right. Oh, my God. Another plane has just hit. It hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion.
As you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into, oh my goodness,
oh God,
there's another one. Oh my goodness, there's another one.
This seems to be on purpose.
Oh my goodness, now it's obvious, I think, that there's a second plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. I think we have a terrorist act of proportions that we cannot begin to imagine at this juncture.
Oh my God.
My goodness. A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center. Obviously, suicide, terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. Oh my goodness.
Oh God.
Into, oh my goodness.
And then as we were watching the live picture here in the studio, we saw a plane crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And again, let's just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
That is a very hard thing to watch.
Just to be sure, there it is.
Oh, goodness.
There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
That is a very hard thing to watch.
To be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through.
Raining down as they're trying to help people.
And you have to wonder, you hear about trade number 7 in trouble right now. And then what does that lead to?
Have you seen any evidence, Elliot, of people being taken out of the building? You say that emergency vehicles are there, understandably so, but of course the major concern is human loss. I mean, do you know if there were many people in the building?
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building. Over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on this shot.
Oh my!
Something else has
You know what?
and
We
that
just
looked more
saw
like
a plane
747.
circling the building. We just saw a plane circling the building.
No doubt a lot of activity on the ground right now. And in terms of the firefighting capabilities, when you get up to this high level, I assume the firefighters have got to get up there and, fight it from inside. If you're taking a look now, you can see that we've just had another explosion, and that is considerably lower. And is that in the other building? Is that what I'm witnessing?
Something that made it clear that the first plane wasn't an accident.
When it too is hijacked. This, the actual plane, as it hits the south tower of the World Trade Center. 8:10 a.m., American Flight 77, a 757 with 64 aboard, has taken off from Washington's Dulles Airport, also bound for Los Angeles. It too, taken over and loops back into the Pentagon. It slices in at an angle, leaving a deadly and ugly gash. 2 United Airlines flights were hijacked today, and that the attack planes were the hijacked domestic flights. Roughly 21 minutes later, approximately 9:03 Eastern Time, the second large jetliner can be seen.
Uncertainty right now as to what is happening. You can see there are choppers. I believe that could be a police helicopter that is. Oh, wow! We just saw. Oh my goodness! You're another live picture right now. Oh my goodness! Of what I believe was a plane.
We're going to re-rack the tape here and see if we can't see a plane. Yeah, we see it right now.
Saw this plane, a jet, American Airlines jet coming, and I thought this doesn't add up. It's really low, and I saw it. It just went. I mean, it was like a cruise missile with wings. And I looked up. I saw the jet banking, and clearly you could see the AA on the side. I knew it was an American Airlines jet, and it went into a steep decline and accelerated. Boom, right into the Pentagon, the side of the Pentagon. And the wings on the jet just folded back, and it just kind of crumpled. It kind of came together like an accordion, and it just pierced the wall of the Pentagon, and there was this huge boom.
Hi there, my name is Mike Walter. I work at WUSA Channel 9 in Washington, D.C., and there's been a lot written on the internet about me and what I witnessed and saw on September 11th, 2001, and so I'm here to set the record straight. One of the other things that's talked about on the internet is the fact that I witnessed it, as did a number of other people from USA Today, and one of the things I've seen written is, oh, well, what was going on? Were all the USA Today people gathering for a picnic at the Pentagon? You should probably know that the Pentagon at the time was located about 9 minutes away from USA Today's headquarters in Roslyn. It's since moved out to Tyson's Corner, but at the time, it was the way that we all went to work each day. We drove by the Pentagon, so it was a common sight for us. One of the things that really bothers me is the fact that people constantly are calling me and emailing me and want information about this, and I'm happy to talk to them. But a lot of them say that, well, you know, physics just says that this is impossible what happened. But what happened is pretty obvious. The force of this jet hitting the Pentagon at about 500 miles an hour, when something hits a concrete structure like that, you know, this belief that the wings would go in is just ridiculous. What I saw was the actual jet going in, but the wings folded back like this. So that's why when you look at the hole, you say, well, it's not big enough. Well, that's why. The wings were not strong enough to withstand the impact. They folded back, and that's why the jet went in, and that's why the hole that you see isn't as large as you might imagine in another structure. Basically, the only reason why I'm doing this is because over the last 5 years, I've been getting a lot of phone calls, emails, and my words have been twisted. And I figure if you're going to the internet for information, go and find the right information. One other suggestion, keep an open mind, but always try and get the facts.
But for anyone with any common sense, and given all the other evidence we have, there's really no doubt that a plane hit the Pentagon.
Approximately 8:45 Eastern Standard Time, a plane crashes into one of the towers at the World Trade Center in New York. Some 18 minutes later, television viewers across the country watch in astonishment as a jetliner flies right into the second Trade Center tower.
Mr. Kallstrom, are you able to see these pictures, by the way? Mr. Kallstrom?
Yes, I am.
Were you able to see those?
I was able to see that, yes.
As you watch that, as you've seen that, I hear the anger builds, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly does build. And I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I mean, we're trained in many ways, both of us. Again, let's just look at this scene. This is amateur video, the plane coming, and now...
I was standing here talking with a couple of people, and then I heard the jet. It was very low. It came right over through here, and then it made a slight twist and dove right into the building. It was a medium-sized passenger airliner. could not identify the markings on it. And it looked to me like stuff actually shot out of the other side of the building. Not the whole plane, but pieces of it flew out the other side.
Yeah, because it's cut on the whole right side. That must be a wing that sheared that off.
Yeah, you could see it. You can see from the cut, it just tipped it up.
Emergency vehicles are there, understandably so, but.
Fight it with helicopters.
That was a United, it looked like, I swear, it looked like a United airplane that crashed into the side of...
The one that just came in now?
Yes. That was a United, it looked like, I swear, it looked like a United airplane that crashed into the side of...
The one that just came in now?
Yes.
What's up? What's up?
I got outside and was shooting. The second plane circled around and it flew out over New Jersey, and then it came in and just... Holy shit! How the fuck the plane flew?
Something that made it clear that the first plane wasn't an accident.
Holy fuck!
sound like something crashed.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God!
Right now, we've got Sean Murtaugh. He is a CNN producer on the telephone right now. Sean, what can you tell us about what you know?
This is Sean Murtaugh, Vice President of Finance. Hello?
Yes, Sean, you're on the air right now. Go ahead. What can you tell us?
I just witnessed a plane that appeared to be cruising slightly lower than normal altitude over New York City, and it appears to have crashed into, I don't know which tower it is, but it hit directly in the middle of one of the World Trade Center towers.
Sean, what kind of plane? Was it a small plane, a jet?
It was a jet. Looked like a two-engine jet, maybe a 737.
You're talking about a large passenger commercial jet.
Large passenger commercial jet.
It's believed the 737 has crashed into, there's speculation at this point, but at least 3 floors taken out, crashed into the side of the building. Joining us right now, one of the producers with Fox Report, Owen Mugen on the scene. Owen, what do you know? What do you see? Where are you?
Yeah, Brian, I'm on the roof of my building, which is about 5 blocks to the south of the World Trade Center. I'm looking right now at the World Trade Center. There's a massive gaping hole on the second tower. It's just unbelievable to look at. There's a massive hole.
It looks like something out of a movie. There is a huge hole in the side of tower number 1.
Tower 1.
Owen, your apartment is just a few blocks from it. Did you hear anything?
I was lying in bed. All of a sudden I heard what sounded like a plane or something coming extremely low, and then we just heard this shattering explosion. I ran up to the roof and confronted by this.
I'm going to interrupt myself and everybody else for a second because one of our senior producers, Mark Obenhaus, is on the phone and he saw the incident. Mark, you hear me?
I do indeed, Peter.
Go ahead.
Well, I was leaving my house to go to work, and I walked down the street to go to the subway. I was at the corner of Franklin and West Broadway, and as I was approaching the subway, a tremendous roar went over my head, and I looked up immediately, and it was a plane, and much lower than I've ever seen a plane in Lower Manhattan. And it was a large plane. I couldn't identify it as anything specific except that it was a commercial jet, certainly. And then my eyes followed it because this is approximately 15 blocks from the World Trade Center, and it just slammed right into it and was completely engulfed by the building. It was extraordinary. No wings flew off, nothing like that. It just went directly in, creating this sort of cavern-like hole. It reminds you of the worst kind of effects in movies that, you're reassured watching a movie that it's an effect, but this is not.
Well, Mark, you and I are supposed to have a meeting not long from now. We'd prefer you to go and work the story if you would and call us back as soon as you can. I will indeed. Many thanks. Mark Obenhaus, one of our senior producers on the phone who saw the incident, describes it as a large plane.
Okay, we actually have an Eyewitness News reporter, Dr. Jay Adlersberg, who was downtown at the time, and he is on the phone with us live. Dr. Jay, what can you tell us?
Hello, Steve. I'm actually uptown at 86th and Riverside. I can see the World Trade Center from about half the building up to the top. And about 5 minutes ago, as I was watching the smoke, a small plane, it looked like a propeller plane, came in from the west, and about 20 or 25 stories below the top of the center, it disappeared for a second and then exploded behind a water tower, so I couldn't tell whether it hit the building or not, but it was very visible that a plane had come in at a low altitude and appeared to crash into the World Trade Center.
Mark Bernbach, a Fox employee, is on the phone with us. Mark witnessed this from what we understand. Mark, were you close enough to be able to see any markings on the airplane?
Hi, gentlemen. How you doing? Yeah, there was definitely a blue logo. It was like a circular logo on the front of the plane, towards the definitely towards the front. It definitely did not look like a commercial plane. I didn't see any windows on the sides, and as far as I knew when I saw it coming down, I was like, well, LaGuardia is pretty far away, and that plane is really slow. And definitely very low. And I'm completely panicked. I'm freaking out. I cannot believe what I just saw.
We are all shaken by this.
Some of the key suspects come to mind: Osama bin Laden. Who knows what? Eric Shawn is with us. Eric, I know you have a lot of sources at the FBI and other agencies like that. What can you tell us?
Well, first, I apologize for being out of breath because I was walking down Fifth Avenue, which is close to our studios, and I heard a jet, perhaps a 737 or a small Airbus, flying low, unusually low over Fifth Avenue, making a right. I'm not going to say that I don't know. I don't have any reports on what type of plane hit the World Trade Center, but people looked up and it made a right toward the building. John, what we just saw, though, obviously, if that indeed was a second aircraft that hit the southern tower of the World Trade Center, that obviously raises the specter of an intentional terrorist attack here, if that is indeed what we are looking at. I don't know what the reports say of what type of plane hit the tower, but I did see a jet airliner that was fairly low.
Tell us what you saw, if you would.
I was waiting at a table and I literally saw it seemed to be like a small plane. I just heard a couple noises. It looked like it bounced off the building, and then I just saw a huge ball of fire on top, and then the smoke seemed to simmer down, and it just a lot of smoke was coming out, and that's pretty much the extent of what I saw.
We're going to join another one of our New York affiliates, WABC, for their live coverage.
Plane overhead, and then all of a sudden I thought it sounded kind of louder. Then I looked up, and all of a sudden it smashed right dead into the center of the World Trade Center. It almost looked like the plane probably went through. I'm not sure.
Winston, can you see? Are you on the north side there where the plane made contact?
Yes, I am.
There where the plane made contact. The plane. There where the plane made contact.
We also have Don Daler on the phone, and he's been with us on Good Morning America for a long time. And Don, where are you, and what do you know?
I'm about 4 or 5 blocks just north of the World Trade Center, and at about 15 minutes ago, there was a loud sound that I can only describe as it sounded like a missile, not an airplane. Then there was a loud explosion, and immediately lots of screaming out on the streets. And I don't want to cause any speculation, but that's the only way I could describe the sound. And
it was pretty heavily banked, maybe 45 degrees. Again, hard to tell. It was kind of unremarkable because you do see planes fly through here. It was a large plane, like a 727, and that's the only reason I kept looking. And then it went right into the building. I just thought it was going to follow the river and keep on going, but it didn't.
Now, after the plane struck the building, from your vantage point, it apparently went directly inside.
That's correct.
Jim, I don't know whether we've confirmed that this was an aircraft, or to be more specific, some people said they thought they saw a missile. Well, I don't know how people could differentiate, but we might keep open the possibility that this was a missile attack on these buildings.
Ali, I must say that we have an eyewitness who said it was a large plane that crashed first. And then as we were watching the live picture here in the studio, we saw a plane crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And again, let's just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
That is a very hard thing to watch.
Jane, you said you saw the first plane. Did you get a glimpse of what kind of plane that was? We were told it was a small commuter plane.
Well, it wasn't a Cessna or anything like that. It was a larger plane, a mid-sized plane, and we could hear it very low. And we heard a very loud
sound, the kind of sound you hear when a plane is you know, going fast past you, followed by an enormous crash and an immediate explosion. I don't think we could feel shock waves, but we sort of felt like we did.
People in the building?
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on this shot.
ABC's Don Dahler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again of what you can see now.
What we're seeing, it appears that there is more and more fire and smoke enveloping the very top of the building. And as fire crews are descending on this area, it does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
Terrible.
I did not see a plane go in. That just exploded.
ABC's Don Dahler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again of what you can see now.
Vantage point from Hoboken. From Hoboken. From Hoboken. From Hoboken. Hoboken, that
it
as you
appears
look
that there is
picture
more
from
and more
our
fire
chopper
and
now
smoke
arriving at the
enveloping the
scene,
very top of the building.
Jim Friedel in
as
Hoboken
fire crews
said it
are
appeared
on
to
this
back
area,
sharply and smash directly.
It does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there
into,
yet. Now remember,
oh my
God.
goodness, there's another one. My goodness,
oh God. Which building are we talking about? The one that's westernmost?
Don Dahler, ABC's Don Dahler, who is on the scene. Don, just give me some description again.
So it's coming out on the north side and the east side of the building of the westernmost tower.
That's correct.
Oh.
That's correct.
Oh.
That's correct.
Oh.
That's correct.
You're over in Chelsea. Did you hear the explosion from your position?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, we heard it and
descending on this area.
Because I was just like standing there, pretty much looking out the window. I didn't see what caused it or if there was an impact.
An effort up there yet. Now remember,
so you have no idea
Oh, there's another one. Another plane just hit.
That looks like a second plane.
Oh my God! Another plane has just hit
just hit
another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion.
From what you can see.
Right.
Now, can you see if there's a lot of debris downstairs, Winston?
No, because it looked like it inverted with the impact. Everything went inside the building.
Inside.
The only thing that came out was a little bit of the outside awning.
As fire crews,
but I'd say the whole is. Let me just get a better look right now.
It does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
swarmed with emergency vehicles and sirens.
Have you
obviously, we're very sensitive to this kind of thing in this neighborhood.
Elliot, have you, of course, because of the incident that occurred in the early 1990s, because of the incident that occurred in the early 1990s. Of course, the major concern is human loss. I mean, do you know if there were many people in the building?
Oh, another one just hit.
And unfortunately, here in New York, many of our stations cannot see this, local stations, because the antennas are on the World Trade Center. They're backup towers on the Empire State Building, but communication, television communication in New York City is probably pretty much knocked off the air. Knocked off the air.
Obviously, suicide, terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. What we have been fearing.
Chopper 5. Anybody on?
What we have been fearing for the longest time here apparently has come to pass. A disastrous terrorist attack.
That is, once again, a picture of one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
A private aircraft.
I'm not sure if it was it just seemed like a smaller plane. I don't think it was anything commercial.
This angle is a little deceptive. As you know, there are 2 Trade Center towers. The shot that we've got is now just from one side of the World Trade Center.
Here, it's near the upper floor, as you can probably see with your chopper shots. I was walking down 6th Avenue this morning at 8:42 a.m. A group of us saw a plane veer through the building. Then we saw a huge cloud of smoke.
It does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane. Has just
I did not
hit.
see a plane go in. That just exploded.
About
about a half an hour later, just as emergency crews were converging on the scene, as eyewitnesses were gathering on the street corners, a second plane drove in too, and you can see that plane coming around the building. Right now, in this tape, and there you can see the hit as it comes through what looked to me, at least, and this is the first time I've seen that tape. Look, you want to be careful here. We don't want to get too far ahead of this, but obviously this has all the appearances of an extraordinarily well-coordinated and devastating terrorist attack.
Many people in the building.
Oh, another one just hit.
Circled around and it flew out over New Jersey and then it came in and just... Holy shit!
Charlie and I have been talking this morning about the near impossibility it would seem that now 2 years after the attacks there would be new video of what happened that day. But right now we want to show you something. We have new footage obtained exclusively by ABC News. You're about to see what we believe is the only known videotape that has recorded both hijacked jets striking the towers. Here, let's look.
We take you back to September 11th, 2 years ago, just seconds before the attacks on the World Trade Towers. An immigrant named Pavel Hlava is recording a video postcard to send home to the Czech Republic. He is riding in an SUV approaching the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. He captures a glimpse of the first plane going into the North Tower, but he doesn't know it. Then he goes into the tunnel, emerging from the tunnel, fixing his camera on the towers again, catching the second plane. It was only weeks later that he realized he had captured that first plane going into the North Tower. In fact, his son almost accidentally erased the tape. Here, you can just see American Flight 11 as it approaches and hits. The second horrifying attack, impossible to miss. The sound you hear, the engines of United Flight 175, only seconds before impact. New images of that now indelible day.
When the writing's on the wall, you draw a line across your mind. When the writing's on the wall, you see the world spinning round.
For tonight, I pray. For tonight, I pray.
The writing's on the wall.
Oh, I'd say. You may smell some of the fumes from a missile exhaust.
Number one suspect has got to be this man, Osama bin Laden.
Last week, scientists at NASA released this. The shot is compiled from data from NASA's VIIRS instrument, which orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes, taking measurements of light coming off the planet. That can be translated into ribbons of imagery like this, and then into one of these. And this is just the latest in NASA's Earth from Space album, which may be one of the most mind-expanding collections of images in human history, in my opinion. It began with a shot taken by the Apollo 8 crew in 1968. And NASA scientist Gene Feldman says it made a big impression on him.
I think it's called Earthrise. And I remember seeing that and the stark contrast between this gray, lifeless rock that we had spent all this time and effort getting to. And here was this beautiful little shining blue and white marble that held everything that we as humans know about history, art, culture, love. Everything was contained on this one little tiny dot in space. I was just so fascinated by the beauty of it and trying to understand, how did this happen? How does it work? Has kind of led me to do what I've done.
And for the last several decades, Feldman has done remote sensing.
Yeah, there's an old expression about sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees.
That is not a problem for a remote sensing scientist. Feldman studies the Earth from space. He says it's like taking vital signs of the planet, which means working with
scientific images that maybe show ocean color or sea surface temperature or land vegetation, or those are why we do what we do, to tell us about the planet from a clinical perspective. But the other images, the beautiful ones, they resonate with people because it's our home.
In 1972, we saw our home in a new way. Apollo 17 astronauts snapped this picture. Actually, they snapped a lot of pictures.
It crystallized so much about the environmental movement at the time. It gave people the first look at their home planet as a single entity.
In 1990, Carl Sagan made this Voyager image famous, his pale blue dot. Here he is on Science Friday talking about it.
I thought, that's us, a mote of dust in a sunbeam. And it spoke to me about the need for us to care for one another and also to preserve the pale blue dot, which is the only home we've ever known. And it underscored the tininess, the comparative insignificance of our world and ourselves.
Then in 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simon made this. And it had wide appeal too. For example, it ended up as the default background on the iPhone.
I didn't even know until I bought an iPhone and turned it on and kind of did a little happy dance.
Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
To us, the really cool thing was the data set. Up until that point, there was no realistic color map of the globe anywhere.
So the land layer here comes from
the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer aboard Terra.
And the tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it was a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command-Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it.
With satellite data, like this map of chlorophyll and land vegetation over time, accuracy is key, obviously. But it's also most easily deciphered as imagery, Feldman says.
Because the data volumes that we get from space now are astronomical, the only way that we can really handle this anymore is to visualize it. And no matter what computers we may build, the human mind and the human eye, in my mind, is still the most powerful integrator of information.
The objective here is to create models that accurately reflect the past so that we can predict how the planet will change in the future, Feldman says.
Or if some of those changes might be negative to the way we want our Earth to be, what can we do about it?
Simon wants to make the world better too, starting with the atmosphere.
And I'm getting results that I like, but I think it's a little bit exaggerated. So I'm working on some techniques to try to tone it down a little bit.
To make it a little more homey. For Science Friday, I'm Flora Lichtman.
That ain't working. That's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks